Donald Trump is spreading some pretty dangerous lies about South Africa.
But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And uh, farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed and their land is being confiscated.
There is no evidence that a genocide is taking place against white South Africans. There have absolutely been some very horrific attacks that have occurred against white farmers, but the very unfortunate reality is that South Africa has one of the highest homicide rates in the world. According to the data, white South Africans make up roughly 2% of homicide victims, while they make up nearly 4 times that in terms of their percentage of the population. A huge reason why white South Africans make up a lower percentage of South Africa's total population compared to a couple decades ago is that so many left after apartheid ended. Donald Trump has also made claims about their land being taken away, and I feel like this can be very misleading without proper context. In 1913, the Natives Land Act was passed in South Africa. It heavily restricted what percent of the land black South Africans could own. It started at 7% and was later increased to 13%. This was enforced via an enormous amount of violence and obviously heavily skewed land ownership in South Africa. This was more or less the status quo until 1991. Think about how recent that is. Many people alive today were alive in 1991. And it is sadly the case that decades of violence and distortion in land ownership does not just disappear overnight. Today in South Africa, roughly 3/4 of privately owned land are owned by white South Africans, despite the fact that they make up roughly 8% of the population. And so yes, the South African government has passed a law where some land can be expropriated without compensation. I am sympathetic to the idea that there is a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. Many people have pointed to Robert Mugabe's land reform in Zimbabwe as they transitioned away from being Rhodesia and they were in a similar circumstance. It is not terribly controversial at this point to say that Mugabe handled that in a very corrupt and inefficient way that led to some very disastrous economic outcomes for Zimbabwe. But that is not the only way to do land reform. For example, South Korea, coming out of the Korean War, handled land reform in a very effective way. I very much hope that there are some students of history in leadership in South Africa that can help them go down the South Korean model for land reform. As for the white South Africans that Donald Trump is granting refugee status for, I have absolutely no problem with these people immigrating to the United States, just like I would have no problem with black South Africans immigrating to the United States. The issue I obviously have is Donald Trump's reasoning for allowing this immigration. It's really not just about Donald Trump's special love for refugees. I have never seen Donald Trump make such a show about accepting refugees from a crisis like Sudan, for example. So while I have no problem at all with white South Africans immigrating to the United States, I think that would be best done without justifying it with a web of lies and distortions.